Well, after doing a degree in anthropology and English, which is really relevant to business, I joined IBM and actually then started as an engineer, but spent 21 years there before finishing there as CEO of Australia and New Zealand. But during that time I lived in Asia, started in New Zealand, finished in Australia, and then through Asia, and then joined Telstra just after the Olympics. And I came across to run the mobiles division, which was very exciting, and then had a couple other roles, and then took on this role as CEO of Telstra 4 years ago. That's been pretty much my career. I've always had a passion for technology. I love customers and enjoy getting engaged with what's going on there, and also I've always enjoyed understanding, maybe a little bit of the anthropological background, how companies work and how organisations of people really function together to create real difference in some ways. Firstly, I think is to recognise that that's the truth, and in recognising that, to know that we are the lesser for that, and that is actually far more important to talk about that and to recognise the reality, because I think often it's not ignored but at least sidestepped, and people are not willing to engage in the conversation. It's complex. If I knew the answers, I would have solved them, so I don't think there's any one silver bullet at all. But it does mean that people in leadership who can make a difference can at least start to talk about some of the reasons and then try to explore them, because one thing I've learned over the years is that my perspective is not the full perspective, and it's only in engaging in that conversation that you start to realise the unsaid things, the things that you just never really quite realised, is somehow creating an impediment to really what we talk about as inclusion, or creating an environment where anybody, irrespective of gender, race, creed, can really do well. So yes, there's a gender issue in terms of leadership, but it's actually far wider than that. I mean, my personal view is I think it's deeply cultural, partly the Australian culture, the little bit of the macho Australian male dominance. Now, that is not reality, and the reality is that we have many different people who are independent of, of their gender, who can contribute to make a difference, and that's what really a good country and a good organisation is about. I think the dialogue is increasing, and my perception is becoming more authentic and a far more real conversation about the issues. I mean, I've sat through the meetings where people have proudly said, I've got this program, and I've done childcare, or I've done unisex toilets, or whatever it is, and very proudly said what a great success it's been. But nothing changed. Nothing changed. And until you get a really authentic conversation, and even in Telstra we have to work at that, where people really share their personal perspective and why they think it's important, it doesn't resonate. Now, we've set targets, and I've reviewed targets year after year, but until it somehow becomes a bit of a personal issue, or a personal touches you in some way, it doesn't really move. So what I've seen change in the conversation, and I'm a member of Male Champions of Change, there's a far greater degree of honesty, but it's really got to not just be academic, because I fundamentally believe that companies are not fulfilling their ultimate potential unless they have a far more diverse leadership, and at all levels of the organisation. Well, let me firstly say we've had targets in the company now for 6 or 7 years. I'm aware of the targets for boards that have been set, and I do believe in targets, even though I know in the US there's sort of a bit of a move away from targets. The reason I believe in them is you've got to know where you sit, and you've got to understand the actual, the numeric truth. However, I think we've got to understand what the implications are of not meeting them, and I really question myself on this. For example, I set a target for my senior leaders about their gender mix each year. Come to the end of the year and we review the number. And let's say they've done really well in terms of business sense. Do I rate them down for not meeting their gender mix? And that's the reality, because that's the hard stuff. Targets are important. I think it's what you do with them that I really question, and I think we've got to do a better job at that. We're going to continue to set targets, because I think that's the one way it brings the conversation up. But you've got to understand it doesn't go all the way in solving the problem. Well, I think flexibility is very important. I know it's a gender issue, but I wonder whether it's just not a general issue. You know, I go and see Google, and you know, flexibility is just built into the culture that's there. I mean, they don't seem to have a gender issue there at all. But I think flexibility is something that technology is enabling us today, and anyone, no matter who, anyone coming from university wants to work in a flexible environment, wants to be outcomes driven, not how many hours you're at the desk. So, I mean, we're trying to personally say, well, every job can be done flexibly. That's where you start. Whereas, you know, in the past, our policy has been, well, you can do this job flexibly, you need to get the approval of your manager and your manager. So turn it around the completely other way. But I think that flexibility is something that just in today's society is so important. So I think it is a gender issue, but I actually think it's a broader issue. And you know, trying to create a more performance-based culture is where people are, you know, measured by their outcomes, not by, you know, how they do the job. Look, I think that if they're real and they're part of what being a values-led organisation is about, they, you know, last forever. So if it's just another program, you know, throw some money at, you know, another set of initiatives, they're the ones who don't last, because you've got to sort of somehow keep them going. But if it's deeply within the cultures and the values and the behaviours you expect in a company, they're the things that are long-lasting and continue on. So, and I think the day of, you know, sort of the trophy CEO who's sort of up there sort of changing the world is gone. You need a strong group of people who stand for something, and when you get that, the culture gets sorted out. I think the gender balance issue gets sorted out, and then you have continuity. That's what I really think. I think this idea of linear progression is really outdated, but it is hard to change. It really is a big change, and you've got to change the way you manage. And I think for all of us, we're thinking it through. Now, I'd like to think that, you know, if someone goes away for a year, that they're still front of mind and they come back and there's going to be the perfect job and all of those other things. But the truth is, often it's hard to coordinate. Sometimes you lose contact with them during that period, even though you try not to. I mean, one of the things we've done with people going on maternity or paternity leave is make sure the manager talks every month in some way, talks to that person, just to keep in contact, because I know what it's like. Even when you go away for a long vacation, you just sort of lose that connection, and it's really important that connection's, you know, kept alive and opportunities are presented or as they come up, because timing's difficult. But I would like to think we can change that, because I think more and more in terms of the challenges of complex leadership roles you have today and all the traits you need to have, sometimes these linear careers are just not equipping people for those big leadership roles. I'd like to think that in the private sector you could go and work in government for a year or two. I mean, I think the US system's great. I think it'd be great to go and do more external study, or go and do what's your passion, climb mountains or something, because you become a better person for it and you come back in. But there is this issue that, you know, out of sight, out of mind. And therefore, that's why people stay and think, gee, if I, you know, leave too quickly, I, you know, may not get that opportunity. So I think we've got a lot of work to do in that area. So today, linear careers are probably a safer bet, but I wish it wasn't the case.